Hello, this is Ethan Brown, and I'm coming back with my senior project Shackled Souls, and I'm about to give my Milestone 3 presentation for the semester. Firstly, I would like to hop into the accomplishments that I've achieved through this milestone. Starting off with the enemy types being illustrated. As you can see on the image here to the right, we have the air, water, default, and earth enemy types. Fire's not here in this image. So each of those types are properly illustrated through the collars that each represent which type they are. For the next couple, we have some selection screens. We have the evolution selection and character selection, which are each treated as different scenes in the game. So in between these scenes, there are scene transitions, which in Shackled Souls is just a huge gate that closes over the whole screen and opens up to reveal the new scene. So with the character selection and evolution selection, we have some evolutions that are designed, and we also have three more characters that are now designed as well, on top of the already implemented character Galvarino. Now, getting on to the characters that are in the game, a little bit of backstory for each of them. They are all actual warriors that existed in history. So, Galvarino was a Mapache warrior from South America, and his elements that are going to represent his kit are fire and air. Flama, he was a Syrian gladiator. His elements that are going to represent his kit are fire and earth. Melanchomas, he was a Greek boxer. His kit's going to be represented by water and air. And Miyamoto, he was a master swordsman, and his elements are going to be water and earth. As I get into the demonstration, I'll go a little bit more in depth into what their kits are. So this will not be all that you see of the characters. Before I get into the demonstration, I'm going to talk about the setbacks that I had for this part of the semester because there is some things that I had to end up dropping, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about why that happened. So, the majority of my issues, really for this entire project for both semesters, comes down to lack of game design patterns. So, especially with this term, it has led to issues with the implementation of evolution, the implementation of abilities, and cleanly handling status effects. So a lot of the issues with these are that these components of my game are supposed to be pretty modular, so I'm supposed to be able to treat them as individual parts. I'm supposed to be able to take other parts and add on to a specific evolution, to a specific ability, to a specific status effect. And my code kind of doesn't easily allow for that. So, for example, with evolution implementation, evolutions are supposed to be able to evolve abilities. But the way that my code handles it, it's really hard to take the logic in an ability and add additional logic to it. So, as of right now, I've kind of had to drop certain types of ability evolutions. I can still do some evolutions to abilities, but as far as adding additional logic to them, there is not a lot of structure there to be able to handle that. And because of a lot of complications that I've had for this semester, uh, I've realized my scope was too big, and I had to end up dropping something else for this pillar, which is the sacrifice room. And this pillar, as I'm going to show you on the next slide, was player choice. So that is something that was very important to Shackled Souls. But I figured out of the things that I had planned for player choice, the most important were character selection and evolution selection. I figured the sacrifice room where you could get items wasn't a necessity to the game in order for there to be a good amount of player choice. Now, coming over onto the last slide before I do my demo, I'd just like to take one last look at the roadmap that I had set out. So I've actually knocked out player choice, which is one of the pillars for Shackled Souls. So that's what I just spent time on. So with combat depth and player choice, that was gonna take the majority of the semester anyway, just getting those things fixed up. Now we're kind of into the final polish stages of the game. There's only a few more weeks left of the semester, so I have been running a little bit behind, but I think I have enough time to definitely get sound design in. I just might not have as much time to do as much polish as I would have liked. So, sound design, definitely going to get that handled. Uh, and I have just a list of things that I'd like to knock out for game polish. So, particle effects, definitely a big thing for polish. Particle effects on enemy projectiles, particle effects for whenever abilities are activated, things like that. Better enemy readability, because when there's so many enemies on the screen, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on. General bug fixing that makes the game kind of feel unfinished when you're playing it. There are some bugs in the game that just make it feel like a very unsmooth experience whenever you're going throughout the dungeon. And general balancing of the enemies and the power that the players have. Uh, I'm sure there are more that I'm gonna find that I'll have to work on, such as especially assets, as you're gonna see whenever I get in my demonstration after this slide. The players actually don't even have their individual sprite sheets yet, and this is because the people that I hired to do these sprite sheets kind of bailed out on me. So I will look for a solution for that by the end of the semester, but as of right now, there are no sprite sheets to show which character you have selected as which. So it's just that same samurai character sprite sheet. So without further ado, I'm gonna hop on over into the demonstration. So first off, I'm going to show the character select screen. And I'm gonna cut. I'm not gonna keep jumping back to the character select screen every time. I'm just gonna cut every time I go to a new character. So got Flama, Galvarino, Melancomas, and Miyamoto. Each of these during the polish stage, I'm gonna put ability descriptions to describe what their abilities do and a little bit of a character background, just to give the players a little bit more depth. So we can start off with Flama. So Flamas's kit is revolved around the fact that he's a Syrian gladiator. So his dash will bash into enemies, dealing damage, knocking them back. He has an AoE ability that knocks people back, and he has an ability that increases his range and knockback. So his kit's pretty much built around knockback. The next warrior that we have here is Galvarino, the South American Mupachi warrior. His dash ability allows him to critically strike after dashing. His spectral ability increases his attack speed and sets enemies ablaze, and his ultimate ability, or his zenith, prevents him from having his life force drained, and then he heals up for a certain amount of the damage that he's dealt. The third warrior is Melanchomos, and he was the Greek boxer. His kit's built around evasiveness, so his dash ability gives him the ability to blink every so often, which gives him a little bit more mobility to dodge attacks. His Spectral ability is a large AoE that deals damage and gives the chance to stun. And his Zenith ability prevents him from taking external damage, and throughout the duration of the shield, depending on the amount of resource he's gained, he will regenerate some life force back. But the amount of resource he has right now is 0, so he won't be gaining any life force back. The final warrior is Miyamoto, the Master Swordsman. His kit is based around the flow of combat. His dash sends out a slash as a projectile. His Spectral ability does the same thing, but it won't show anything in this room because there's no enemies. So it sends out 4 slashes rather than 1, and each slash is homing. And then his Zenith ability is one of my favorites. It allows him to dash between nearby enemies, dealing massive amounts of damage. So let's go try to find a good room to show off these abilities in. This will work. I'll show off his spectral ability first. The homing projectiles come out and deal damage, and then the zenith will dash between all the enemies left and deals massive damage. The last thing here that I have to demo is the evolution select screen. So normally this pops up after you defeat the boss, but I have a hotkey set to just go to that scene whenever I press N. So I'm going to press N and show you guys what the evolution screen looks like. So the scene transition activates and we're on a new scene. So we have 3 evolutions to choose from here, and depending on what you get, it can be anything from an ability evolution, it can be a permanent buff, or it can be a modifier to the certain elements. So Fire and Flames gives a fire modifier of plus 0.5 and plus 10 to any damage permanently, and then it gives you plus 1 to your piercing stat. So if we choose that, we get loaded into the next level, and you see right here, this is the indicator that the Fire and Flames permanent buff has activated and is now on your character. So that's all I have for my presentation today. Now, with the last few remaining weeks of the semester, I'm going to work on the polish and sound design, and then I'll see you guys again for the final vertical slice. And as always, thanks for your time.